Hi, this is Congressman Tom Cole, the 4th District of Oklahoma. It's another one of our weekly chats. It's been a very eventful week in Congress, and you expect this at this time of year with funding running out on September 30th, and obviously now with a very consequential national election coming up. So let's talk first about where we are on funding. There was an effort by Republicans to do what's called a continuing resolution, or a CR, through March, and to attach to that a piece of legislation. It's called H.R. 9494, House Resolution 9494, which would make it crystal clear that it would be illegal for anybody who's not an American citizen to vote in an election, federal election, and that's something actually most Americans in both parties agree on. Strangely enough, we brought this to the floor and it failed. Democrats didn't want any mention of illegal immigrants voting, and there was a few Republicans that wanted a shorter continuing resolution, that is one that would only run through the end of the year. And there were a group of people that, and they were Republicans, 16 altogether. 14 voted no, 2 voted present. That quite frankly, just don't like continuing resolutions. They're right about not liking continuing resolutions, but if the alternative is between a continuing resolution and shutting down the government, I'm going to always vote for the continuing resolution. I think government shutdowns never work. They inconvenience the American people. We have lots of folks in our district, military people who would not get paid during a shutdown. Obviously, our workers at places like our civilian workers at places like Tinker Air Force Base, Fort Sill, the Kerr Water Labs, the National Weather Center, those people depend on their paychecks just like every other American. And we shouldn't interrupt those paychecks simply because Congress is having a hard time coming to a final agreement on the budget. So in the end, again, I always favor that. But the bill went down. It went down not because we actually had some Democrats, I think 3 or 4, that voted with us, but we lost 16 Republicans in a narrow House majority. That's too many to lose. So now we've moved into the next phase of negotiation, which as Chairman of Appropriations I'm heavily involved in, and it's just to have what's called a clean CR, a clean continuing resolution. Keeps everything exactly like it is today, with full funding through probably mid-December at some point. There's still not certainty about the debate. That would keep the government running, allow the American people to go to the polls, make their decision, and we know with certainty who the next president's going to be, who's going to be controlling the Senate, who's going to be controlling the House. And then we try and reach a spending deal for next calendar year in the final 3 months of this year. So that's where we're at. I'll be working through the weekend, negotiating with my colleagues in both chambers, House and Senate, both sides of the aisle, Democrat and Republican, to try and get this clean CR. There's always a few adjustments you have to make. They're called anomalies, to make sure that important programs are not, don't run out, so to speak. And there's broad agreement on that. I will tell you, we began discussions in the last couple of days. The discussions have gone very well. Nobody on either side wants a government shutdown. Nobody on either side are drawing lines in the sand. So far it's been, well, what about this, or should we make sure this is done? But again, we want a large bipartisan vote to keep the government open, let the American people make their decisions, and then honestly sit down with the next president of the United States and sit down with the knowledge of who's going to be controlling the various chambers, and then try to come to a broader deal. If we can't do that by the middle to the end of December, then I think there'll be another continuing resolution. I don't sense any large group of members on either side of the aisle wants the government shutdown. It's just not in the best interest of the country. We don't think it's in the best interest of anybody that precipitated that. And again, we want the opinion of the next president of the United States, which we cannot have until after the election. We want that person to tell us, do you want us to finish this work now, which in my opinion we should do regardless of who wins, or do you want to have us wait until the new president shows up? And we're going to be guided by what that person, certainly the people in the party of the new president will be solicitous and probably supportive of whatever the new president wants to do. So that's kind of where we're at. We've also passed a lot of legislation, actually on a bipartisan basis, dealing with everything to China, to violence against women by illegal aliens, and those sorts of things. They're actually pretty good bills. They're things that tend to unite us as opposed to divide us. And that's what Congress is focusing on. We all know this is a little late in the day to have significant legislation on the eve of a presidential election. We should really pause, let the American people speak about the broad direction in which they want us to move, and go from there. So that's what's happening in Congress right now. And again, we'll be working through the weekend trying to deal with that issue. And hopefully by early next week, we'll have a bill to vote on that's broadly agreed to. Not every member of either party will support it, but we're looking for something that a substantial majority of both parties can vote on and keep the government running and functioning and not inconvenience, let alone harm the country. And then we'll come back after the election and see if we can come to a broader agreement. So thank you for following this. But one thing I would end with is you're pretty close to a very important election. How you vote is your own business. I would just urge you to vote. Again, it's extraordinarily important. The American people are going to choose a new president for sure, obviously, since President Biden's not running for re-election. They're going to decide who's controlling the House and who's controlling the Senate. And it only matters if you vote. You can have an opinion, but your opinion doesn't matter very much if you don't take the time to vote. So again, regardless of how you're going to vote, please participate in the process. And I say that you ought to do it as an American, just out of respect for the privileges that we have, but you also ought to do it to honor the men and women in uniform. They're stationed all over the world, in a very dangerous world. They're fighting to make sure that we are protected and that we have the right that our Constitution gives us, which is so precious and so rare in the world. Nobody in China gets to vote for who's going to run China. Nobody in Russia really has a meaningful vote on who's going to run Russia. In the United States, it's going to be your choice between former President Trump and current Vice President Harris, and you ought to take the opportunity that so few people in the world have, and we ought to express our opinion collectively as to who ought to lead us. So with that, good luck, Godspeed, and I look forward to visiting with you next week.